Roxo Media House.
Welcome back into Dissecting the Frogs Countdown Edition. It's been a minute since we've been back and done one of these shows. Obviously, the crazy weather. Texas got a little bit of ice going on. It's raining today, but we are still here. We got here safely to deliver you guys these next two plays. As a reminder, we're going through the top 10 most impactful plays of the season, and that might be plays we've already covered, it might not be, and it might be plays that in the moment didn't seem as impactful as we realize now, looking back at it. These are the top 10 plays that really made TCU's season what it was. And we've been doing a lot of recruiting while we've been away. So Dave, tell us a little bit about what's going on over there.
Yeah, it's been busy between the weather and, all things recruiting right now as they wrapped up what is traditionally signing day. Frogs didn't sign anybody on that day, but they were certainly busy from the early signing period in December where they locked up in some cases, we'll call a top 15 class. And then they had a bunch of transfers come in and enroll this semester, including 4- and 5-star or former 4- and 5-star recruits out of high school, a few guys from Alabama. So they are on a roll, and then they continued with Junior Day just a week ago, which we had a bunch of guys here in studio for. So been really busy on that front with Frogs Today covering recruiting, and we'll continue to cover recruiting on FrogsToday.com for you at all times.
Absolutely. Being able to look at these plays, seeing what's impactful, and then seeing those next guys that are going to come here and make these impactful plays for us next season is a huge full circle moment, and we can't wait to share top play number 8 and number 7 with you. We're going to get to number 8 when we get back.
The surge in his head, former head coach David Beaudin brings his football expertise to Frog fans everywhere in Dissecting the Frogs.
Welcome back in. We're going to go ahead and get right into play number 8. And to set the scene, it is Kendre Miller time right here in Austin at this point in time. And this play, it's 2nd and 5 in the third quarter, 5:08 left in that third quarter. And TCU is going to go up 10-0. Now, Kendre Miller, we've talked about him a ton. I know his name. We know his name. We all know his game. But it took the rest of the country a little bit to catch up. This play, this game for Kendre was a big step forward to making sure his name was out there, and especially when they went to that championship. Tell me a little bit about why this play stood out to you.
Yeah, well, not only did it change, looking at running backs, it brought Kendre Miller's name to the forefront, but also just this brand of football that TCU could play. Up to that point, you look at it, they had some punt returns, that led to big victories. They went on a road to SMU, kind of won a little bit ugly there, but got to win. They had a blowout win against OU at this point, and they had an overtime win, a high-scoring overtime win against Oklahoma State. But now they're in Austin at night. All the talk is about Bijan Robinson, the Texas star running back, which they held to 29 yards that night. And so when you look on the flip side, to have Kendre bust off a run like this really made a statement for Kendre, but also that they could win these type of games, where it was a defensive battle. Of course, it was 3-0 Frogs at this point before we ripped off this big run. And so, to me, that's set the stage for a team that can win in many different ways. And they can say, hey, if we got to have a slugfest and run the football, we can do it. And guess what, Texas? We can do it better than you.
Absolutely. And no matter how many times they come back every season and are absolutely horrible, a win over Texas in Austin is exactly what TCU wants to see every season for as many seasons as they can, because a win over UT, especially in Austin, solidifies that you are a great football team. Absolutely. And Kendre Miller, just getting into more about him, what did you see from him in this play that stood out to you?
Yeah, really, it was all him. They actually, didn't block everyone. They didn't have the numbers to block, which we're going to look at here in a minute on film to block everybody. But, he did a really nice job cutting back, and we'll take a look at that. And then just, to show his speed. We all know the power running back that he is, but for him to put on the, speed against elite athletes at Texas, all these big-time recruits with a ton of speed, for him to break away like that, I think really put him on the national stage for running backs and in that conversation as one of the top backs in the country. So I think from that standpoint, it was also huge for Kendre personally.
And obviously Kendra foregoing a senior season, going into the draft this season, hoping to get picked up by a team. Do you think this is one of those games that those teams are going to look at and know who Kendra is as a player from this performance?
Sure. I think, you never want to – it's tough to compare offensive players versus offensive players, right? Because obviously they're not lining up directly against one another. However, all eyes were on, on Beaudin that night for Texas, and for Kendra to come out and silence the crowd. There was a huge crowd there, almost 100,000 people at night going crazy, and he really silenced the crowd, and all eyes were on him. So I absolutely think this will be, propel him and help him out and his stock, going up when the draft time comes.
Absolutely, and enough hypotheticals talk. Let's get right into it. I want to see Kendra Miller run all over these Longhorns. Kendra Miller right here, obviously just reestablishing and taking a bigger lead for TCU over UT 10-0 at this point. Definitely has been a defensive battle up until now, and we really just see him come out of the gate and obviously become Kendra that we know and love to watch him. So right here, we've got a little bit of a coverage situation going on. What is it?
Yeah, so it's man-free coverage, Maggie. These guys are man underneath with a free safety down the middle.
Okay.
So I don't know. We've talked about it a lot over the year.
Yeah, we've talked about this. You want to re-explain maybe for the viewers?
Sure. So right here, it looks like zone coverage early on, but this is the indicator. So right now, you could tell this is certainly man-to-man. And you can tell he's lined up, pressed against him, looking right at his receiver, not looking into the football at all. So you know it's man coverage there. You've got 3 over 3 out here, does Texas, so you can see that they, possibility it might be man. These two safeties right here, for Texas, these two guys, they start off in sort of a too high shell to kind of disguise this. So they're trying to disguise it. They've got 3 over 3, but they're all looking into the ball, trying to make it look like zone. But as you let this thing play out, as soon as the ball snapped, they all turn and ultimately face their receivers. This guy,
we know it's man now.
Yeah, we know it's man, exactly. So this corner right here, he's what they call soft man. He's playing off of him, but that's a man turn. When anybody puts their rear end to the quarterback, that's what they call a man turn. Had he looked in and put his rear end to the receiver, looking back at the quarterback, that's a zone turn. So we know it's man-to-man underneath. So that does a nice job taking guys out of the box for for the defense. However, they still don't have great numbers. We're gonna let this thing play out. TCU runs one back power. We're gonna get a better look at that in the end zone. You see Savion Williams doing a really nice job here, and this is key. So what he does is allow this corner to kind of get inside. Anytime a corner peeks inside, okay, that's trouble, okay, for a defense. And Kendra Miller exploits that. He gets outside right now. There's nobody to sort of force that back in because the corner peeked inside. And then it's just a foot race, of course, the rest of the way. But if I can back this thing up before it gets to that point, Texas is in trouble a little bit. Now they have numbers. We're going to see that in the end zone. This here is just an edge player, okay? So he's there. So there's no overhang defender or a safety who runs the alley. The only guy is this free safety. He's the only free runner. But he's rotating down the middle of the field because it's man-free. And man-free coverage, that's his spot. He has to protect the post or anything like that if they were to pass the ball. He's the free runner. He misses. So really Texas has no one there. And we'll take a look at the end zone here. Wes Harris is going to pull on a one-back power. And if you look, there's only 5 guys to block, and there's really 6 defenders. So not great numbers initially. They're not going to read an end. They're going to block it this way. Okay, he's going to take a man. He's going to block back. And then Wes Harris is going to pull for this one. And he's got to take the edge. Coker does on this side. So now there really isn't one for this linebacker. But if you watch and let this thing play, what he's doing early on is what they call stemming around. He's moving around, trying to, much like the secondary was, he's trying to disguise the defense. But what happens in a 4-down front, when you stem around like that, you can get out of position. I think that's what happens here for the linebacker. He also plays bad technique. He starts hopping, okay? Another big part of this, before we close out, is Max Duggan and his ability to run the football. He's always a threat, and so that holds people on the backside as well. Okay, this thing normally should hit right here, okay, behind the puller. However, because this linebacker hops and gets over the top, now, as you can see, that natural cutback, and then he breaks it back to the outside because of the job that Savion Williams does, as we showed earlier, on the perimeter. And then, once again, Kendra Miller for a big, powerful back to show off this elite speed on the big stage was really impressive.
So 2 questions. Would you say that Kendra was able to maneuver this to the end zone because of mishappenings on the secondary and TCU being able to exploit them?
Yeah, it is, and it's a really nice job by Kendra understanding this, because once in a while in one back power, even though it's designed to go here, with the puller and sort of follow that puller, a lot of times if you have your eyes in the right place, and Kendra certainly does, and you see the linebacker get over the top, then you're able to cut that thing back, and he does that. And then his next cut, he understands that the corner fell in and to get outside. So it's not as just simple as just taking the ball and running to the end zone. He has to have great eye discipline and understand, as a running back, the 2 biggest things you do before you get the football are your footwork to get you in the right position, and then who you're reading, where are your eyes. And Kendra does a phenomenal job here. And then the fact that he's a elite athlete takes over for the rest of it.
And then when we went back to that first view, looking at the safeties, we talked a lot about the passing and hopefully like pass protection that the secondary was trying to have. Do you think that they were expecting a pass on this play? Yeah,
I don't. That's a great question. I think they spread them out, and TCU did a nice job of this all year long. But they wanted to spread you out in a traditional pass looks. But it was the fact to kind of displace some defenders in order to run the football. So they did a nice job of that. And then so I think they were expecting some kind of pass. You really not a great situation in trips to be in man coverage underneath. Because like I said earlier, you take guys out of the box. And so I think you're right. I think, they want to make sure they took care of business in the pass game. But TCU did a nice job here, ripping off a big one. It was 2nd and 10.
Yeah.
And so, that is traditionally a passing down.
Yeah.
But TCU caught him off guard here.
Absolutely. Definitely a win for TCU in that film session following the game. And sure, they got a little bit of a talking to those Longhorn players after this one. When we come back, we're going to be talking about play number 7 and what it meant to TCU season. And then we're going to go ahead and take you into it just like we did this one.
Say hello to the water of tomorrow. Richard's Rainwater. Richard's Rainwater is 100% rain, refreshing, renewable, and the only ingredient we use in our water. Why rain? Because everyone deserves access to clean water, and rain is a 100% renewable resource available everywhere. Drink the rain. Save the planet. Shop now at richardsrainwater.com.
Welcome back in. We hope you enjoyed number 8. Getting into number 7, we take you to the game at Kansas. Now, to understand why a game at Kansas could be so influential on the rest of the season, you have to understand what was going on at this point. Right now, TCU and Kansas are undefeated, and College Game Day is there because only one team is going to come out as still undefeated. Now, we know how this one ends. It was TCU. Spoiler, sorry for anyone who didn't know that yet. But we see Quentin Johnson, he gets this touchdown pass. It now goes up 38-31, 136 left in the game, and TCU is going to take this win. But how did we get there? How were the Frogs playing before this big Quentin Johnson save happened?
Yeah, you look at them, they were up, had a comfortable lead in the first half. Kansas storms back, and Maggie, you and I were there. It was an incredible environment. Like you said, game day was there, and incredible environment at Kansas, not being a basketball game.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Was very different for them, but they were all in. The crowd was extremely into the game with their rock chalk chants and all that.
The wave the wheat. I have to admit, I was terrified.
That's
it worked.
It did, and it was a great environment for them to go in, again, on the road. It goes back to winning different types of games. When you're on a championship type run, you have to win games in different ways. And they went in there, again, exciting crowd, game day, 2 undefeated teams. And from them to go in there and win in this fashion, and in dramatic fashion, I think you have to do that at least once or twice. You have to win some close games that maybe shouldn't have been as close. But that's just what it requires to make a championship run. And the Frogs did that. And as you just saw, it was a heck of a catch. We're going to dive more into how all that one happened here in a second.
Absolutely. And for Quentin Johnson, just the same as we talked about Kendra Miller, Quentin is also foregoing his senior season, going to the draft. Do you think this is one of those plays that will stick out for him?
Yeah, it's only one of the plays. So really the reason we chose this one was because it was really his his coming out party for the year. Everyone knew who Quentin Johnson was. Don't get me wrong, but he really put the team.
He was locked up until then.
Yeah, he put the team on his shoulders for this one.
Yeah.
Had a huge game, and to me, this was the top play in his top game. And I think you have to include that for the season that Quentin Johnson had, his top play, and for him to have the game winner sort of walk off, so to speak, was pretty dramatic and exciting. And I thought certainly it was the key to another victory for the Frogs to remain unbeaten at this time.
Absolutely. And just to kind of circle back to what a win over Kansas means normally and what it kind of meant this season, what do you think the difference was if TCU came out losing in a tough way, but against Kansas, versus winning the way they did?
Yeah, I mean, it's an entirely different season, right? If Quentin doesn't come up with this catch, or somehow they don't find a way to win this one at the end, you're talking about losing to a Kansas team that ended up going on quite a skid really after this time. So who knows where the trajectory could have went in a different direction for the Frogs. And so I think this was, they kept pace. Kansas went in a different direction. But at the time, these were two really good football teams in a really good football environment.
And we all have seen the stats. We know these were two great teams. But I think personally, from what I was seeing around social media and the kind of national media coverage and conversation was still, but it's just Kansas and it was close. And I think at that point, this still isn't the game that turned it over for the Frogs. We still are not there yet at this part of the season. What were they, 5-0 at this point? And we are still not there yet. It was a tough season to get those haters to stop it. But we're going to go ahead and get into that film. We're going to break down everything we saw, all the little logistics, all the things Dave loves. Play number 7, and you already know it's all about Quentin Johnson and what this meant for his season and the Frogs season as they went to Kansas to play an undefeated Kansas team. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. We've already talked about the implications and what this as a whole meant for TCU. But how did we get there, and how did we get those implications? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so how they got there, first of all, is the personnel, right? They had two outside receivers traditionally, in Quentin Johnson and Savion Williams. What I mean by outside is normally these guys line up on the outside the numbers, okay? So you'll have one on each side. But anytime they get in what they call 12 personnel, so that's one running back, two tight ends. You can see the two tight ends on this side and the left side. Anytime they got in that, Quentin Johnson would go to the slot. They'd keep, at this point in the season, they'd keep Savion and Quentin out there together. Two bigger, traditionally outside receivers, but now you're matching up Quentin Johnson against a safety who may not have the same cover skills as a corner, and so really it gives the advantage to the Frogs. I think Kansas understood this to some degree because they wanted to play man-free as well. We just talked about that in the last play in coverage, but they were playing a much softer man. You could see the cushion and the respect that they had for these receivers, how far off they were playing.
They could tell the speed was coming.
That's right, yeah. And then the free safety, this was 2nd and 8, so they're expecting maybe something, some kind of squaring or something over the middle. And so he was playing what they call the low hole. He was playing down here, robbing any kind of any kind of squaring or something coming inside.
Is that his way to also maybe keep an eye on Kendre and Max?
Yeah, I mean it's really, you're right. He can spy and look into the backfield.
He's the tell-all right now.
He is. He's the free player, right? And man free. They're talking about this guy being free. He doesn't have a man responsibility. So it's a great point. And so when you look at this, they ran a slot fade by Quentin, which is lining up in the slot, ultimately running the fade. This is a smash type concept, and then you'll see Savion Williams break inside, and then once he doesn't get the football, he'll burst and becomes almost like a switch vertical concept after the fact. But you see right here, everyone else is in man coverage. You'll see the linebacker on Amari DiMarcardo. He'll follow this one. But really, Max knew where he was going with this one. Hey, game's on the line. Let's go to my guy, right? The guy that's going to make a play, and he certainly made an incredible play here. As we'll watch this thing, a lot of people live didn't think he got his feet in, but great job.
I can tell you he did.
Yeah, in fact, he got 2. It would have been good in the NFL, not just college football. But did a really nice job tracking the football over his shoulder and adjusting, using his body to shield the defender and catch the ball on the outside. That's exactly where you want to drop it in the bucket if you're the quarterback. Max did a great job of that. And then Quentin did a nice job, again, using his size to his advantage and really maximizing that for the game winner. And take a look at the end zone really quick, because as we know, this is football is a game of inches. That is cliche, but it's so true. Max does a nice job avoiding throwing off platform, if you will, certainly off balance, because they had a really great pass rusher here for Kansas. Coker on the outside at right tackle, I think if he had to do this again, he probably would have set more vertically instead of opening his shoulder, what they call gating the defender. He does that, however, he recovers really nicely in getting on the hip and trying to ride him upfield so Max has a place to step up and throw the football. So these are sort of the game within the game, right? And so that's the individual battles that are going on, and then Max does a nice job throwing an absolute dime with that pressure, throwing off balance and then dropping this ball where really it's impossible to defend. You see, when you throw the ball a fade, it drops in that area and the receiver runs the exact route and positions his body this way. It's undefendable, and they were able to come away with the win here. It was a thriller for sure.
Absolutely. And kind of just going back to what we even saw before Quentin can even make this catch is Savion right there. And I think he really sells it because he does get those two guys on him. So now he's really helping out the play by there's two guys on him, and now Quentin only has to deal with one. Quentin can handle one low guy.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. These guys are in man, but this free safety bites on this one here, right? And now puts one-on-one on Quentin Johnson on a safety, exactly what they wanted to do. You're exactly right. And this was, the matchup that the Frogs wanted. And that's what you can do. By manipulating personnel, you start to create matchups, and that's what this game is. It is true in the NFL. It's true in college football. This is a game of one-on-one matchups, and you're trying to constantly get the advantage there. The Frogs do here, and they go to their star player at the right time.
Absolutely. And I'm not too sure about the release time on when Max releases the ball and when this free safety fully decides that he's going to come over and cover Savion. But do you think if he would have known that it was going to, do you think he would have switched coverages? Do you think there's any point that he would have gone to Quentin Johnston?
Yeah, well,
that free safety?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think every situation, you start thinking through your head, you're going through that Rolodex mentally of the situation, the down and distance, the time in the game. And so you're thinking right here, okay, they really need a field goal to win it. It's 2nd and 8, and so you're thinking about those things as a safety.
You're thinking they'll go for a field goal.
Yeah, yes, exactly. You'll think you'll throw the ball underneath, just trying to control the football. Yeah. But Max is a gunslinger, right? If you know anything about him, he said, "The heck with it. Let's just put this thing to bed right now. Let's not play to, let's play to win." And so I think the safety is thinking, okay, they're going to throw the ball underneath, or they're trying to get it to Savion here. And by doing that, Max just said, the heck with it. Let's go up top. And obviously it was a decision that worked out.
So free safety did his job here. His biggest mistake was downing Max Duggan. It happens, buddy. It happens. It happens. We all did. So when we come back, we're going to be closing out the show. And we'll see you guys when we come back.
Dave's Hot Chicken is a cult favorite and now has 2 locations in Fort Worth, Bryant Irvin Road on I-20 and Berry Street at TCU. Both owned and operated by Horned Frogs. Order the number 4 or number 5 for the tastiest lunch special under $10. Or order online at daveshotchicken.com.
Well, those 2 plays are going to do it for our show this week. As a reminder, we're going to have 5 episodes. We've got 2 down. That means we've got 3 left. Quick math. Yes, I go to TCU. And next week, we are going to be talking about number 6 and number 5. Also some quick math. Did it on the fly there. But we've got a lot more stuff coming out for you guys this week. Dave, what are we going on?
Yeah, so tomorrow a new show debuts at John's Grill. You can watch it live on FrogsToday.com and on our YouTube channel, Frogs Today YouTube channel. It's called the Players Club. It's led by actual, TCU student athletes, interviewing other student athletes, and so I think it's going to be a really cool show. Make sure you check that out. You can go watch it live at 6 p.m. or watch the streaming as well. And then on Friday, Frogs Today comes out. There's a pre- and post-game show for the Baylor game live as well. It's on Saturday. So a lot going on. And then if you check out FrogsToday.com, tons of written content going out right now. I'll have a recruiting rundown for you on Friday. But Melissa Treebosser, Jeff Wilson, and Jamie Plunkett have stuff continue about all the sports and all your TCU favorites. So go ahead and check that out. There's a lot going on, as always, here at Frogs Today.
Well, there always is. And don't worry, guys. I will make sure Dave uses capital letters and spelling and punctuation. I'll be on him for that one. He's not just a football head guy. So next week, we'll see you for play number 6 and number 5.
Roxo Media House.